My name's Kevin O'Brien. I'm the Director of Compliance for a company called SEMLEP Limited, based in Northampton. And we are a logistics company, which is fundamentally warehousing and transport.
So our first question from the students was, what was your first job and what path did you take to get into the job that you are now? And that's come from the post-16s at Isbrook School.
Okay, so it's a long, long time ago now. My first actual job in warehousing was picking boxes for Tesco's in a warehouse not far from North London. And I was on a 13-week temporary contract. At the end of that 13 weeks, I probably didn't do too badly because they took me on permanently. And then I became a fork truck driver. I worked in the office at weekends. Then I became a standing supervisor onto being a manager. When that site closed after 2 years, I transferred to a brand new site near Hatfield and became a shift manager. And from there on, my career flourished with Tesco's over 22 years. And then when we moved to Northampton, I was ultimately made redundant by Tesco's for operational reasons. I started work with SEMLEP Limited as a health and safety manager.
Fantastic. So if you could just tell us a little bit about what SEMLEP do and the kind of other companies that they work for.
Yeah, so SEMLEP, I've got several warehouses around the county. Biggest one is at Brackmills. We've got 15 to 20 different customers in there, all different brands. We've got some food products, we've got packaging, car components, a very well-known coffee brand that store their products with us. We've held spices in the past, cardboard, shrink wrap, all sorts of things, all manner of things. We've got another big warehouse up near Lutterworth, which is electrical goods for a major retailer. And that's primarily what they do at that site in Lutterworth particularly.
Fantastic. And this question came in from Daventry Hill. How many miles approximately do SEMLEP lorries travel? Because we often see them all around the country. Have you got a figure that you can put to that question?
I can put a spot on figure, Tom. So checking out across the year, now there'll be different seasonal exceptions. However, for last year, we travelled 1.1 million miles nationally, which is an incredible achievement across 30 vehicles, really. So the drivers are working all year round, trying to make sure that people get the products and that our customers are satisfied.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. And the next question, what are the different kind of jobs available within the company to school leavers, and what qualifications, if any, do they need? And that comes from Isbrook School again.
Okay, so there's so many different jobs around logistics, not just within SEMLEP, but I could probably reel off 60 different job titles just within our business. But if you're studying at school, as regards qualifications, if you're interested in mathematics, you might want to come on and become an accountant, work in our accounts department. Ultimately, there's becoming a director of finance. Once you've gained a lot of experience. If you like IT, if you like your computers, there's always room within logistics, particularly with its fast-changing environment, where we're looking for people who've got that knowledge that they can bring to us. I mean, as said earlier, some of us are getting a bit older and probably are less wiser when it comes to things like IT, and we need young people to come in and give us their new ideas. Within SEMLEP, I have actually found that happening, that the younger people coming in, they teach us all about Word and Excel and Sage and all of the new systems that there are, and they're all of big benefit to SEMLEP and to any logistics companies. So qualifications, while it's always good to get qualifications and come in, we don't actually say no to anybody who hasn't got any qualifications. A lot of it is to do with whether you're the right kind of person, whether you're interested in logistics. Driving is a little bit different because you need to get certain driving qualifications when you hit 18 years of age. Obviously, first of all, you need a provisional driving license, but from there on, I'd recommend perhaps getting a bit of experience driving vans and things so that you're used to driving on the roads and you understand the different situations which can be very difficult that our drivers do come into, and ultimately you evolve into one day driving 40-foot lorry and trying to avoid reversing into bollards and parked cars and things like that. It's quite a challenging environment, and you're the one person in that cab trying to make sure that nothing gets damaged and the customer's satisfied ultimately. So drivers, give them absolute respect.
And I think you've answered this next question in terms of a typical working day for a driver, in that there's lots of different things that happen. But for somebody who's perhaps they've left school at maybe 18 and looking at their first job, maybe a picking and packing role, is there a sort of typical working day? Are there different shift patterns that will work?
Yeah, certainly. Again, dependent on the season. I mean, Christmas is a typical time where we'll be really busy, 24/7. We'll be busy leading up to Christmas. But typically, within CBUT, we run 3 shifts. So it'll be a 6 a.m. start, which is nice and early. So for anybody who's gained experience doing paper rounds and things like that, they won't have trouble getting out of bed, because I did exactly the same thing. So 6 till 2 p.m. is not unusual. Then some people like to do the 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. shift, so they can have a lie-in in the morning every morning. And then in between, we've got a 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift. Now, I did night shift myself for 2 years when I worked for Tesco's, and I have to say I struggled with it. But to some people, it suits their lifestyle. But just be warned that if you work night shift, you'll get woken up by the postman after having 2 hours sleep in the morning as well.
So we had a question in from the students at Red Kite about the different hours, which you've looked at their different shift patterns. Within the industry, is there the possibility for people who perhaps don't feel able to or don't want to work 40 hours a week? Is part-time work an option?
Yeah, of course. As I said, sometimes we will take on people just for short periods. If people are available for 4 hours a day, 6 hours a day, more office-based, I would admit, but there might be peak periods where we need to do something called pick and pack. So therefore, we can be sort of repacking goods at a customer's request, and that might just be sort of for an afternoon. So there are options out there, yeah, definitely.
And you mentioned about ages for drivers, but the students at Red Kite also wanted to know, are there any other specific age restrictions in terms of where people can work within the company?
Right, warehouse work is normally 17, but taking health and safety in mind, as I would do in my role, we would do a young person's risk assessment and make sure that they are right for what they were doing, particularly if they were going to progress into driving something called MHE, which is mechanical handling equipment, which can be sort of a powered pallet truck through to a fork truck, to fork trucks where the driver will sit in them and will go up into the air with the products next to them and slot them into the racking. So if you're not scared of heights, that's probably quite a good job to take on, that one.
And that flows into the next question that we had from Isbrook Post 16 in a way. Often people see these big warehouses on the edge of town, but what's it actually like working inside them? Because sometimes they just look huge, but actually when you get inside them, it's not always the case.
No, in the past, I've worked in a 1 million square foot warehouse, which is a huge size. So what tends to happen, once you've been in them for a while, they get smaller and smaller and smaller. They look immense when they're empty and the racking starts to come in. But once the products start filling the racking up and workers turn up every day across the shifts, you soon develop a camaraderie amongst the people, which is really important. I can't stress that enough. If you're working with your colleagues for 8, 10, 12 hours a day within one warehouse, you can really build sort of fantastic camaraderie and get great working relationships going with your colleagues, and it's really important. So the warehouse environment is an interesting place. We've got the full facilities that you would expect. So we've got canteen, vending machines, microwaves. Obviously, you're going to have toilets and heating, all the things that you legally have to have. But the most important part, and I will say this to anybody, of a working environment is a person that stood next to you, or these days, socially distanced from you, in that place at the time. They're the most important person.
And just a final question, which we had to ask you in particular, what safety measures are put in place in your workplace to make sure that everyone remains safe in that industry?
Oh, Tom, this is one I could talk about all day. So health and safety is absolutely paramount in logistics. From when the goods come in, to when they go out, because ultimately we're putting a loaded vehicle out on the highway, which has to be safe. The load has to be restrained legally, just in case we get stopped by the police or DVSA, which are the authority that looks after the roads for our industry. So that load must be absolutely safe, because we don't want to injure anybody. Most of all, particularly if it's on a motorway, we don't want to have an accident with another vehicle. So that load must be absolutely restrained and perfect when it leaves site. Key to that is training, as an immense safety measure. Training is absolutely so significant to people, and we do it regularly. Drivers undergo, every 5 years, they have to carry out 35 hours of training called driver CPC. They get that when they pass their initial test. They have to get it, otherwise they can't drive. And this is on top of driving licenses and driving qualifications. Yeah, they must drive with a certificate of professional competency. They have to renew it every 5 years, and that means that they have to attend training courses, which I write and deliver for our business, and other companies do similar. So safety is absolutely key. Within the warehouse environment, there will be things like 3 yearly refresher training for fork truck drivers. We do regular toolbox talks. We do regular briefings, daily briefings with staff about safety matters. You have to have really good, strong, robust reporting processes in place as well, to make sure that people feel comfortable if they see a safety hazard and what they do about it as well. The managers are ultimately responsible, but I'll always say everybody is entirely responsible when it comes to health and safety.
Fantastic. And thank you so much. It's great to hear those reassurances. So, Kevin, on behalf of everyone and all the schools across the SEMLEP region, a huge thank you for your time.
No problem, Tom. Thank you very much for asking. Thank you. And good luck, everybody. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Christy. I am the Health and Safety Manager at Wincanton in Northampton. We work for Sainsburys on their contract, holding all of their stock for their grocery stores.
So a question from Isbrook Post 16. What was your first job, and what path did you take to get to the job that you're in now?
Great question. My very first job was actually a paper round at about the age of 13, which is probably pretty unheard of nowadays, but that's where I started. And I also then had a Saturday job in a shoe shop in the city where I lived. It really wasn't the path that I was expecting. My ambition as a 6-year-old onwards was to join the police. For one reason or another, it didn't happen, but my path took me down a few different jobs of customer service type roles, and one that kind of then saw me get involved in warehousing and logistics was where I went to support. From my customer service role, I went to support in the warehouse, and then from then on got a job in the warehouse as a manager, and again, it didn't really link with where I am now, but ended up returning to work from maternity leave and being offered a job in health and safety. Didn't really think I had that many qualifications or qualities to do it, but 14 years later, and I'm now a professionally qualified health and safety manager.
Thank you. Now, what are the different jobs available to school leavers if they wanted to come and work at Wincanton, and what qualifications, if any, do they need?
Okay, so we have a variety of roles in Wincanton. Logistics is a huge industry where the supply chain basically delivers your product from a warehouse to a store so that you can go and buy it. So in that role, in the roles available, there are warehouse operatives, drivers, and then support functions such as finance, HR, which look after the people side of things, other departments, planning, which people tend to forget are needed, but they're a really crucial part of the supply chain industry. We don't take on school leavers, but we take on from the age of 18.
Fantastic. So for somebody coming into their first job with you, maybe as an operative, what would a typical working day be like for them? And that's from Daventry Hill School.
Okay, yeah. So as a warehouse operative, for example, their main role will be picking and or packing goods. And as I said, this is a Sainsburys contract, so this is going to be all food related items or items that you would buy from a supermarket, basically. And we have 3 different chambers, so you could work in any of those 3 chambers, often driving what we call MHE, mechanical handling equipment, and you kind of drive that with a cage or a pallet on the back of your forks and go around picking the items from the stock locations that your device tells you to go and get. It varies as what your requirement is for that day, depending on what chamber you work in, but pretty much your job as a warehouse operative is picking and packing items into cages or pallets.
Now, you've already sort of answered this question from Red Kite, but it's from 18 years and over. Is that for any particular reason that they don't accept people from 16?
One of the main reasons is that the role is a very physical and manual role, and therefore the kind of idea is that 16 and 17-year-olds are still not necessarily always fully developed, and the risk of A, getting a manual handling injury, and B, deviating slightly from the training and everything, which could lead to an injury, is the main reason we tend not to take people on younger than 18. It's more of the risk associated with them hurting themselves than it is for any other reason.
Thank you for that. And this is a question from Icebook Post 16, which you've covered a little bit of already, but having been into Wincanton, it's, can you describe what the actual work environment is like? Because obviously it's a huge building from the outside, but inside it's quite different.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people, when they see the inside of a warehouse for the first time, are quite surprised by what it looks like. So the outside, as you just said, is huge. It's a massive warehouse, and they've also got a big yard. We hold about 200 vehicles on site here, so you can tell how big the yard needs to be to have all those around. The warehouse itself is split here into 3 different chambers, and that's all to do with the stock that's held in them. So firstly, we have our ambient chamber, and that's where we would hold everything you would go and buy from a supermarket that's held on the shelves and doesn't need to be kept cool. So that could be cat food, any type of pet food, any cereals, all of your drinks that you drink, Easter eggs, chocolates, anything like that. And ambient kind of describes how the temperature is, because it could be whatever the temperature is outside. So if it's pretty cold outside, the ambient chamber you'll feel the chill in there. But if it's a really hot summer's day, you'll notice that it's quite warm in the ambient chamber. And then we move on to the produce chamber, which holds our fresh fruit and vegetables and our eggs, anything that needs to be kept cool but doesn't necessarily need a really low temperature. So it's a lot of fruit and veg in there. And then we move along into our chill chamber, and this is definitely the coldest. It's about +3 degrees in there. It's basically like working in a fridge environment. It's not as cold as a freezer, it doesn't freeze the stock, but if you imagine working in or putting your hand or head inside a fridge for the day, that's it. So people have to be wrapped up warm in there, and that products kept in there are anything that you would put in your fridge at home. So any types of butter, milk, ready-made meals, anything that has to be kept at a certain temperature.
Fantastic. And a question from Red Kite School. Can you work different hours, e.g. is part-time work available?
We actually run an operation here of 24/7 and 364 days a year. We only close on Christmas Day, so that's not great if you're a warehouse operative and have to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning on Boxing Day, but that's how it is because people need or want their shopping available to them. We generally run 3 shifts: 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., 2 p.m. to 10 p.m., and then 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. So that's the night shift. But we also have shifts in between that as well. So starting at say 4 p.m. or 6 p.m., depending on where the requirement is. We also do take on part-timers as well. So people can work 4 hours a day instead. said, but they generally have to work 5 out of 7 shifts a week, and that could be on a fixed rota or a flexible one where their rest days change. But yeah, we absolutely do encourage people to take on part-time hours if that's what it suits for them.
And I guess this question's got 2 parts, really. Are there more people looking for jobs at the moment, and are there still vacancies where you're working?
Yeah, absolutely. So with what's happened in the pandemic recently, the grocery industry has actually been one of the industries to be in that kind of makes your job pretty safe, because as we know that, you know, shops closed, everything closed, but yeah, everybody still needs to go to the supermarket and get their requirements. So we've been recruiting all the way through because our volumes went up, and we're currently recruiting as well within the Sainsburys network. Changes are happening all the time. And they move volume around from different depots all over the country, and they're working on some projects at the moment, which has meant that we're actually recruiting or in the last few months, in the next few months going on, we'll have recruited an extra 100 warehouse operatives and an extra 50 drivers. So there's definitely jobs all the time available in the grocery network.
Fantastic. And a question here again from Misebrook: do people need a uniform or PPE at work, and do they have to supply this themselves, or do you as an organisation give them this?
Oh, good question again. So uniform is issued to colleagues on day 1 of their induction, and generally this will involve trousers, a t-shirt and a jacket, and the jacket type will depend on what environment they're working in. So as I've mentioned, ambient is not generally as cold, so they get a lighter jacket to work in there, whereas in the chill chamber it's like working in a fridge. They actually need a much thicker kind of bomber type jacket. So the uniform is issued to the PPE is different because PPE is a legal requirement. If we've determined from our risk assessment that we need to give somebody PPE to keep them safe, then actually we have to provide this, and we're not allowed to charge for it. It's free of charge. The uniform is also free, but for PPE it's a legal requirement. So the main PPE items on a site such as this in warehousing and transport would be safety boots. So these are the toe protectors that if you drop something or kick something heavy or hard, your toes and feet would be protected. We also insist on them being boots here as opposed to just safety shoes, because that also gives a lot more protection to the ankle. We then issue a high vis. You can probably just about to see mine in the camera, and what you'll see is reflective strips. So the jacket itself can be any color, but the reflective strips have to make up a certain proportion of your high visibility jacket, and this is mainly just for so that people can be seen better, and certainly outdoors and at night the strips will reflect on the lights of a vehicle, so you'll be lit up a bit better and easier to see in a yard. The other thing is gloves. We issue our colleagues with gloves, and that will depend on where they're working as to what sort they need. We issue picking gloves, which are thin gloves but offer small protection from kind of splinters or little abrasions and cuts for the ambient chamber. But if you're working loading cages onto the back of a trailer, then you actually need much thicker gloves, because the risk, you're handling cages a lot more often and the risk of pinching your fingers is higher. So yeah, PPE and uniform are both issued free.
Thank you so much for your time. That's been a great insight into careers with you. So thank you very much from everyone at all the schools, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name's Hannah. I'm Head of Commercial and Development at ACS Recruitment. So a recruitment agency finds jobs for candidates, people, and finds candidates for clients, so work organisations, and we match on skill sets. So my first job was actually as an apprentice. I started off as an administrator stroke receptionist. I actually started in recruitment accidentally. But yes, I started as an apprentice as a school leaver. And I have basically continued with work-based learning all the way up to where I am today. So there is a variety of jobs available to school leavers, and they range in terms of the qualifications that you need. I would always say that to have your maths and English at grade C and above is super important. But equally, if that isn't something that you happen to achieve in your exams, then there are always basic, your key skills that you can do as work-based learning. In terms of opportunities, within the local area, there could be anything from administration to engineering and also warehouse. And again, those qualifications vary dependent upon what kind of career path you want to take. Obviously, if you're going to be a doctor, you're going to need to go to university. A typical working day in the life of ACS Recruitment is varied. It's busy. It's vibrant. You have your set tasks that you have to get done throughout the day, but it's a very reactive industry. So you never really know what's going to come through the door, which makes it super exciting. School leavers, really. In terms of how old you need to be, we have apprentices, so people that have literally left school and are working with us at the moment on their apprenticeship. So yeah, there's no kind of definitive, and we're a very mixed bag in terms of ages. The work environment, as I said, is, it's very busy, it's very vibrant, it's a sales arena. So whilst we do find jobs for people and people for jobs, we also are, sales individuals. So lots of telephone work, lots of conversations, high energy. So yeah, it's good, it's fun. You absolutely can work different hours. We, again, have a mixture of hours that are worked within our office. So we have some people working part-time, whether that be kind of a few days clumped together. And we also have people that work part-time over maybe the 5 days, and those full-timers. What I would say in recruitment specifically is that it does tend to be a full-time role, especially if you're going into the consultant arena, because you have such a variety of roles within one role that you have to do that you simply wouldn't be able to do it on part-time. But if you were going maybe onto reception or payroll or something like that, then there definitely is opportunity to work part-time. There are lots of people looking for work at the moment. However, at the moment, I would say that, touch wood, thankfully, there's no more than what there would normally be. There's lots of roles out there, which is fantastic. We've got some absolutely brilliant brands within Northampton, and some well-known high street names. So there is lots of roles. So actually, sometimes we do struggle to find really good candidates. So I would say it's kind of 50-50. It isn't all warehouse work in terms of what work you can, go into. Like I just said, Northampton is home to some very, very large brands, to some high-end retailers. So lots of high street names that you will recognise within a head office capacity. So take, for example, Bracknell's Industrial Estate. Now, you may drive around that and think, is it just warehouse? Is it just logistics? But no, it isn't. Obviously, with any kind of distribution and warehouse division, you're going to get your accounts teams, you're going to get your reception, your admin, your secretarial. So there is a variety of roles that you can go into, alongside obviously your warehouse, your pick pack, but then it could be quite specialist that you might want to go into kind of QA work, where you're kind of quality assurance and checking the goods, forklift. So yeah, good pick of the crop. Well, it all depends in terms of pay, being completely honest. Obviously, if you're going to start as an apprentice, then obviously your salary or your hourly rate will be in line with what the apprentice scheme is offering. And that does get reviewed, and each company is completely different how they will operate that platform. In terms of hourly rates, if we're going on kind of the national living, then it depends on the client. Now, some organisations will just say that everybody is on standard national living at 25 and over. But some organisations will actually say they'll put it into the bandings of the national living wage, dependent upon the individual's age. Again, it completely varies. You could get an organisation, if it's a skilled role, and somebody's got, you know, fantastic GCSE or A-level results, and they're going in as a kind of grad entry level, they might actually pay them, you know, a lot more than market value. It just depends really on the organisation. In terms of a uniform and PPE, again, this absolutely depends on who you're going to work for. So, for example, ACS Recruitment, you don't need a uniform. It's kind of smart casual, and, you know, trousers, shirt, you know, you're in an office environment. But equally, if you are going to site and you're going into a warehouse, and you will need safety boots, just in case anything drops on you. ACS will supply that if you are a member of, if you work for ACS Recruitment. High vis as well for health and safety, especially if you're kind of in a warehouse environment. At the moment, obviously, we are supplying our candidates with face masks and visors, in line with obviously the COVID-19 regulations. Uniforms, some organisations do. I've worked with a couple of clients that when the candidates, if they go into a temporary position, they don't need the uniform, but once they go permanent, then they will be issued with a uniform. Some of the guys at ACS do have polo shirts because they're on site quite a bit. So they're in a warehouse environment, they'll have fleeces because it can be quite cold, and they're branded. So yes, if you do need a uniform and it's working for ACS Recruitment in our office as such as an employee, then we will supply that. But 9 times out of 10, if you go and work for a client and they require you to have a uniform, they will too supply it for you. Do I find recruitment stressful? At times, yes, it is a very pressured environment, and a very kind of, it can be a stressful industry to go into. And I would say that one of the reasons for that is because you are having to manage the expectations of your candidate, whilst also manage the expectations of your client, and kind of pull those two together. Obviously, we work with people, and we're delightfully creative, innovative individuals that are always kind of thinking. So it's not that you know, are selling or working with a product that is as it says on the tin. Things always change. It's quite organic. So it naturally means that with that, you're not only having to deal with the factors internally within your role, but also external factors, people, the economy, you know, a pandemic, while still having to achieve your target financially, and make sure obviously that you're looking after your candidates, looking after your clients and servicing. But ultimately, if you are honest, if you are methodical and organised, it genuinely doesn't have to be that chaotic and stressful. And also if you have a great team around you.